All right then. So now we will see how we can add some row gap and column gap inside of our grid columns and rows. So what I'll do, I'll just comment out this particular line. And what I will do here, I will do something like grid template. Okay. And here I will do repeat for the rows of 2 and then 1 FR. And for the columns, I will do repeat of 4 and do 1 FR. Okay, hit save. And now if I go to my HTML here, I'll just get rid of the lorem ipsum text here. And yeah, I will get rid of this text here as well. And I will uncomment all of these. Okay, all right. So as you can see, there is our grid. Okay, awesome. So we have 2 rows and 4 columns. Now we have this gap CSS property where we have 2 constituent properties. So column gap and row gap. So we will see both of them. Okay. All right. So we can do something like here inside of the container. Okay. Inside of this container, we can do something like column gap and do something like 10 pixels. Okay, hit save. So now here inside of the browser, as you can see, all of the columns which we have are separated by a 10 pixels of gap. Okay, that is awesome. And one thing to point out here is that there is no gap between the border and the columns. Okay, here and here there is no gap. So the gap is only between the columns. Okay. Okay, now we can do something like row gap. Okay, so we can do something like 20 pixels. Hit save. Now if we go here, as you can see, our rows are separated by 20 pixels of gap. All right. So in that way, we can add some gaps between our columns and rows. Okay, by using the column gap and the row gap. Now we have a shorthand property as well. So all of these are inside of the container. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll just get rid of these comments. Okay, all right, so we are having this one. So we can do something like only the gap. Okay, and here I will just comment out this. So if I just do the gap of something like 20 pixel, then it will set the column gap and the row gap at the same time to 20 pixels. Okay, if I do that, then our columns and our rows are separated by 20 pixels of gap. Now, as you can see here, we have another syntax which accepts 2 different values. Okay, as you can see. And here, if we go down a little bit, or let's go to the VS Code and see. Okay, so if I just hover over that, as you can see, the syntax here, the first value will be for the row gap and the second value will be for the column gap. So for the row gap, it can be 20 pixel, and for the column gap, it can be 50 pixels. Okay, if I save that, then go to the browser, as you can see, the column gap is now 50 pixels and the row gap is now 20 pixels. Okay, in that way, you can set the gaps between the rows and the column. So this is basically the gap CSS property. We use the gap inside of the flexbox as well, and we use the gap inside of the grid as well. Also, sometimes you might see something like grid gap. Okay, if I save that, then the same thing happens. Okay, and if I just go here and just do something like grid gap. Okay, so here early versions of the specification called this property grid gap, and to maintain compatibility with legacy websites, browsers still accept grid gap as an alias for gap. So the grid gap is an alias for the gap, but most of the time we use only gap. Okay, inside of the grid and inside of the flexbox as well. Okay, all right, so this is how we can create some gaps between rows and the columns inside of our CSS grid.